As podcasters, we always think, you know what, if we only had that big time celebrity on our show. But today I'm going to tell you 7 reasons why you should not have that celebrity guest on your podcast. Let's jump in.
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? How is your podcast coming along? I want to say thank you so much for being here. I am Chris, and I am from the original Chris and Christine Show podcast. You can find out every single thing about that show on a website, which I built all by myself. Yeah, check that out at chrisandchristineshow.com. But here is Podtastic Audio, the show that I've created to help you create your show. And speaking of your show, how is your podcast coming along? Are you enjoying the ride of podcasting? Are you having any fun yet? Maybe you decided to make a podcast and you're thinking, well, hell, man, this is a lot harder than I thought it could be, because I thought we're just going to jump on here and talk to my buddies. We're going to do it like Rogan style. You know, we're going to just talk about our personal stories and our personal things. Well, maybe that's fun for you, but for the listener on the other side, do you really think they want to hear that, said in a very casual conversation style? Hey, you can podcast however you want to do it. It's your show. There's no rules in podcasting. You can do a show about anything and everything, as long as you do not preach hate speech or you do not tell any hateful things towards any type of person or culture or race, anything like that. You are pretty much free to talk about whatever you want. Just remember that you're not going to please everybody, and no matter what you say, there's always going to be a hater out there that disagrees with the things that you say, or people that you have on, or guests that you have on your show. So just be careful of that stuff. One thing that I made the mistake of when it comes to podcasting is that thinking that podcasting was just another extension or a parallel to the common radio or radio format. All of my podcasting listening experience before I kind of got into podcasting was listening to the rebroadcasting of the morning radio shows, which is great, by the way, because if you do not have time to catch the morning show on your drive to work because either you're doing something else or maybe you switched to night shift like I did, and I was like, wow, I can't listen to my favorite shows. But then I realized, they have a podcast version of this. Let me download the podcast version of the morning show I missed that same day, and then I could listen to it whenever I wanted to. So all of my listening experience when it comes to podcasting was this whole radio broadcasting mindset. And that's probably why I started the Chris and Christine Show in sort of that same format. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just that with podcasting, we can really narrow down a particular topic or niche. We can get really narrow focused on whatever it is you want to talk about, but you can get really focused on a particular topic. You can get really narrowed down and not go so broad. We think that if we go extremely broad, that will capture more people to come into the show. And we are finding out that that is not always the case. But even with the classic standard terrestrial radio, each station is tailor tuned for a particular type of listener. You got the oldie station, you got the country station, you got the heavy metal station, you got the alternative rock station, you got the pop disco station. Each of those is pretty much tailor tuned to a particular type of listener. And if you listen to any type of radio or television or any kind of media at all, Entertainment Tonight, you name it, even the nightly news, they've had celebrities on their show, celebrity interviews. They're a dime a dozen. So why are you trying so hard to get these celebrity podcast guests on your show? And did it ever occur to you that having a podcast guest that is a celebrity is overrated? Yeah, I know. I think that a lot of podcasters think that if they do get this celebrity guest on their show, that their show will explode and become mega popular. Why? Why would you think that having a celebrity guest on your little show would make your little show mega popular? Is it because you think that, oh, you've made it, you get to talk to this big shot? Think of all the interviews that celebrity was on prior to even getting to your show. Think about it. All of the media outlets, all of the radio stations, all of the news, all of the Entertainment Tonight, TMZ, whatever, they've been on a gazillion different interviews before they even got to yours. So chances are anybody that likes that said celebrity, there's a chance they've already heard them a gazillion times. And do you think they really need to hear another interview from you? Well, chances are probably not. So if you are an independent podcast that is trying to get celebrity guests for your show, like you're thinking this will be my ticket to fame, will be getting a celebrity guest on my show, I have 7 reasons why that is not a good idea and why you should focus on maybe having regular people to talk to with real stories that are relatable to all of us. So here are the 7 reasons why podcasters do not need celebrity guest interviews. Now, number 1 is saturation and overexposure. You see, celebrity guests are often featured across multiple podcasts, multiple radio stations, multiple formats all over the world, leading to an oversaturation of their interviews in the podcasting landscape, not to mention the media landscape all over. You see, you got to make your show for your listener and think, what would your listener like to hear? See, the listeners become fatigued by hearing the same guests with the same stories and the similar things over and over and over again. It becomes a repeat of very similar things that we've already heard before. You think about your podcast guest with your celebrity. How many times have they said the same story about the movie they were in or the director that they worked with or the college that they went to or where they grew up? How many times have we already heard that story? Chances are, if you're a true fan of that celebrity, as a listener, you already know those things. Okay, moving on to the second reason why podcasters do not need celebrity guest interviews, and that is authenticity concerns. You see, celebrity interviews can sometimes feel scripted or rehearsed because they've done it a gazillion times, potentially lacking the authenticity that listeners seek in more casual and genuine conversations because you really want to have a deep, genuine, real conversation with your guest. You see, when the celebrity guest is on your podcast, they also have the pressure of the public image that may prevent celebrities from sharing their true thoughts and experiences because anything they say, whether it's on a podcast, a radio show, anywhere, could potentially hurt them somewhere down the line. That's why some guests that are celebrities, if they do come on your show, they may sign off on an affidavit saying, I cannot talk about X, Y, or Z. So basically, you're stuck wondering, what am I supposed to talk to you about? Your new movie that everybody else has talked about? It really kind of hinders your ability to interview the guest in the first place. So moving on to number 3, diverse perspectives ignored. So what does that mean? It means that by focusing on celebrity guests, podcasters may miss the opportunity to amplify diverse voices and share unique perspectives that aren't commonly heard in mainstream media. Like I said, if you have a celebrity guest, there's chances are they've been on a gazillion different interviews before they even got to yours, and we've already heard all their stuff. We've already heard everything they possibly are going to willingly share in the media. You see, if a podcaster like you and me, if we decide to choose lesser known guests, they can bring a fresh insight to your audience, something different and unique, something that's truly yours. Okay, moving on to number 4 of the reasons why you do not need a celebrity guest for your podcast is repetitive narratives. Now, what does that really mean? It means that, you know what, dude, if this celebrity has been on a bunch of different podcasts before they even got to yours. You see, they often share the same stories from interview to interview, to show to show, to media outlet to media outlet. It's kind of the same things. So what happens is there is a lack of novelty in diminishing the value for your listeners. You have to remember, a big name on your show does not always translate to big value for your guests. In fact, there's no value when I think about it. What's the value of bringing a celebrity onto your show? To your listener, zero. And because the guest does not want to share deep personal stuff, the original and unique content can be sacrificed for the sake of sticking to a well-worn, basic chit-chat, very surface level stuff. Okay, now moving on to number 5, which is probably always my number favorite. When I do these lists, it seems like number 5 seems to be my favorite of the list. I don't know why it works out that way, it just is. But number 5 is intimacy and relatability. You see, if you're interviewing a big shot celebrity, how can me, the listener, how can we even relate to anything they've experienced or have gone through? Listeners may struggle to relate to the experiences of celebrities, which can hinder the establishment of a strong connection between the podcaster and their audience. You see, if you have lesser known guests that are more relatable to your audience, that will connect bigger for you with your audience directly. Because listen, if a certain celebrity was telling me about their BMW and their this, and they went traveling here, or they're working on a movie there, or they got to work with this director or this actor doing this thing or that thing, it's fun and all, but how does that help me? How does that help me, the listener? How does it help me at all? Really, if you think about it, it doesn't really. Okay, moving on to number 6 of the reasons why podcasters do not need celebrity guests on their show, and that is listener fatigue. Are you tired of hearing the same interviews over and over again? Are you tired yet? Because celebrity guests in the podcasting space can contribute to listener fatigue, as audiences may be seeking a break from the mainstream, from regular radio. You think about it, that guest was probably on the radio doing interviews, or even on television, maybe Entertainment Tonight, so on and so forth. By the time they get to you, I'm already tired of them. I've already heard everything they had to say, and I'm bored already with them. Let's get something fresh in there. Your podcast is not radio. You are not talking to a broad audience. You're talking to a narrow audience. So sometimes diversifying your guest list can keep the content engaging and more appealing to your particular audience. Now, the final 7th reason why podcasters do not need celebrities for their podcast interviews, and that is innovative content opportunities. Well, what does that even mean, man? It means that focusing solely on celebrity guests may limit the podcaster's ability to explore innovative formats or experiment with different styles of content. Listen, your show is not set in stone. You can do it however you want to do it. You can mix it up. You can do an interview one week, do a solo episode the other week. You can do a list show. You can do a top 10 show. You can do whatever you want to do. It's really up to you. But exploring new and unique topics or unconventional interview styles, maybe you can do it like a narrative style if you want to. It's really up to you. You see, exploring new ideas can really set your podcast apart from the crowd of other podcasts that are out there doing the exact same thing. So I always say, think different, be outside the box, and don't try to do the exact same thing that everybody else is doing, especially mainstream radio. Everybody wants to follow that same format. But why? I mean, listen, I've made that same mistake myself. But I also realize now, after learning my mistakes, that it's okay to be different. It's okay to do a show that is truly unique and a show that is different than everybody else. Why be the same when you can be different and be unique to your podcast audience? Because you think about it, at the end of the day, you're creating a show for your podcast listening audience, whoever they are. Only you should know who your podcast audience is. And if you do not know, you should probably find out because you are making a show for them. And the more you know about your audience, the more tailored tuned you can make each episode's content for them, directly for them. But hey, I do know that as a podcaster, as an indie podcaster, we would love to have these big time celebrity guests because they do bring a lot of attention to our podcast. But it's crucial for podcasters to weigh the potential downsides and consider alternative approaches that prioritize authenticity, diversity, and engagement with their audience. Next time before you think, I'm going to have XYZ celebrity guest on my show, think, would the listeners appreciate hearing another interview from that person? And why would interviewing on your show be any different than interviewing on anybody else's show? Perhaps maybe you know the celebrity personally. They are a good friend of yours. In that case, it's a different thing. I'm talking about the average Joe, the regular person like you and me that do not know any of these celebrities at all. And we're going to have them on our show to talk about what makes your show so different. And like I said before, some of these celebrities may only want to talk about a few different topics. They might have a list that you have to sign and say, I will not talk about this, or that. And you're thinking, well, that was what the interview was going to be about. How am I going to make an interview with a celebrity if they do not want to talk about the biggest news story that happened to them, how they were caught cheating in the back of a car, in the back of a hotel room by the paparazzi or something? How am I not going to talk about that? How am I going to talk about the TV show that they're on that just got canceled or something? Whatever it is, I'm just giving an example here. I'm just saying that although it may be very tempting to take a celebrity guest for your show, on the Chris and Christine show, we have cut out all celebrity guest interviews for the show unless they actually fill in to our particular topic and niche. If they do not, we do not have them. We do not need them. We do not want them. Only if they fall into our very strict, very narrow guidelines of who we want on the show, which we've kind of steered away from general discussion, talking to celebrity, anybody kind of shows. We've kind of focused more on life and society and children and family and careers. So the guests we do have on, they kind of fit that criteria. And having a big shot celebrity on that episode for your podcast that week, it may boost numbers for that particular episode. It may, not saying it will, not a guarantee, it might. But then after that, everything kind of fizzles and you're back to the regular numbers all over again. Like I said, it can be oversaturated with hearing these guest interviews. In fact, the shows I do listen to, the podcasts that I do subscribe to, I'm not really curious. I could care less if they have a celebrity on their show or not. So maybe it's just me, because when I hear a celebrity or I see a show that's interviewing a quote unquote celebrity, I'm like, well, what do I need to know about them that I haven't already heard before? And are you booking that big celebrity on your show because you want to talk to them, because you want to feel important, because you want to hobnob with the celebrity? Or are you thinking that the audience, my audience, they really got to hear what this celebrity has to say. They really got to hear my interview with this person. Probably the first part is the reason why you're booking that celebrity on the show. You're probably missing the point when it comes to your audience, and your audience should be the main priority when you create your podcast in the first place. Hey, thanks again for listening. I am also on social media. Yeah, check that out. You can find me on Twitter on Podtastic A. And if you go over to the gram, that is the Instagram, you can find me under Podtastic Audio. Very simple. Give me a follow, give me a like, and so I will catch you on the next episode.